My story starts on October 12, 2012. I had sort of a backache, didn't seem to be too much to worry about, and the night before I had been bobbing around in heels at a Van Andel Institute event taking pictures for a fundraiser for cancer research. But this was Friday, and on Fridays I was looking forward to doing my shift as a volunteer programmer on WYCE, where I was known as Victoria, aka Voodoo, where you get folk, blues, jazz, rock, and world beat all in one place. 88.1 FM, WYCE, Wyoming, Grand Rapids, a service of the Community Media Center. Well, I went in to do my show and went to sit in what we call the big chair, although I, like some of the other programmers, rarely actually sat in the chair. We'd stand up, operating the controls, interviewing guests, answering the phone, going back and forth to the music library, and dancing along while we played the music. But because the backache lingered, I considered sitting down, and as soon as I went to sit, I was hit with the most intense pain imaginable, a pain that was so great in my back that I couldn't even speak with a microphone right there in front of my face. I turned off the microphone, I was able to summon for help, got myself to the emergency room. And when I got inside, it was evidence that I was in for a wait, because there were people waiting patiently. I didn't have anything hanging out of me, I wasn't bleeding, my vital signs were normal, and so I paced around until I was seen. Finally, I went in, was examined, scanned, x-rayed, and the source of my backache was discovered. I was missing a rib, part of another rib. 2 ribs were broken, and my vertebrae were being eaten away by something all the way up to the point of entering the protective layer around my spinal cord. Whoa, what could do such a thing, I wondered. And I paused and I thought, was it the Diet Mountain Dew and Cheetos I've lived on half my life? Well, the story wasn't that easy or simple. The doctor told me it was most likely cancer that had metastasized from either a lung or liver or breast. And I was shocked, I was stunned. I left the hospital in a daze, and sometimes it's those precious little things that come to mind first. The first thing I thought I needed to do was get rid of anything that was embarrassing. And so I cleaned out my underwear drawer. Some of you are going to go home and do that now. I got rid of the undies that were comfy, yet well worn. And then I called my daughter, and her and her grandson came over, and I broke the news to them, and we cried and we prayed. Well, after that, I called my doctor that Monday morning. I said, now what do I do? And he says, you have to come back here immediately. You should have never left the hospital. You could be paralyzed at any moment. And I don't remember anyone saying that I needed to stay at the hospital, but I got back there. I was admitted, and a biopsy revealed a name for what was eating me, and it was cancer. It was called multiple myeloma. Multiple myeloma. That didn't sound like one of the bad cancers. Well, treatment was to start immediately, and my staff covered for me, but I know I needed to do something to break the news to my friends and family, so I did it the way we do in the 21st century. I posted it on Facebook. The amount of support and blessings and encouragement that I received was astounding. And one person in my life, Lori, my good friend, who was on a journey of her own and had some experience in the infusion lab at LAX, agreed to go with me on my first chemotherapy appointment, which was New Year's Eve, chemo cocktail. Lori gave me all kinds of tips and suggestions and ideas, but one of the most valuable things she let me know was when I went into the infusion lab, I didn't actually need to sit in the chairs that line the infusion area. I could go in, I'd get hooked up to the chemo on the metal thing, which I called a chemo puppy, and I could walk around and walk through the gift shop and go visit the art and go to the cafeteria and go into St. Mary's and visit the Stations of the Cross and do whatever I wanted to do until that chemo puppy started beeping, and then I needed to get back, got unhooked, and I was on my way. Well, as luck or even more blessings would have it, a stem cell treatment program started right here in Grand Rapids, and I became a candidate for a stem cell transplant. Ironically, at the same time, another friend of mine, Kathy, was diagnosed with the same crap at the same time. But she was a few steps ahead of me in this journey, and she became my big sister and someone I could confide in and ask for what to expect and some tips and ideas and what questions I should ask. And as we got closer to the stem cell process, which involved gathering my own stem cells, which would be given back to me later, Kathy had a concern when it came to me. And that concern wasn't about all the chemo that we had gotten and all the tubes they had coming in and out of me or any of that. She was concerned about my ability to sit through the process. I thought, what would make Kathy think I couldn't sit through something that could potentially prolong my life? Kathy would have no way of knowing that I was considered a difficult child in school, that my parents were advised to have me medicated, in fact. And as a child, I was frequently teased for having ants in my pants. But I thought Kathy wouldn't have any idea of those things about me. What would make her think that I couldn't sit through a procedure that could save my life? It's not going to happen. I'll be okay. Time went by, and then I met with Dr. Williams. She was in charge of the stem cell treatment program. But she echoed the same concern about me that Kathy had. And she guaranteed to me that they would do everything in their power to help me sit through this process, which is called apheresis. And I thought, whoa, what would make Dr. Williams think that I couldn't sit through a procedure? I mean, you just sit. People do that all the time. She would have no way of knowing that I've never sat through a movie. She'd have no way of knowing that I avoid any trip, any activity that involves sitting for an extended period of time. And she certainly would know that I carry a camera around with me almost everywhere I go. And any kind of events that I'm at, if there's a presentation or a dinner that involves people sitting, I have a reason to get up and move around, because I need to take pictures. She wouldn't know that. So what made her think I would have a hard time with the sitting? And the day arrived, and I went into the room with the machine and got hooked up to a line that was about this far away to the machine, and I sat. And I made it through with the help of a lot of visitors, books, magazines, TV, and my iPad. I made it through a day of sitting. It was hard. It didn't always go well, but I did it. I accomplished it. And I left at the end of that day with the note that if we haven't gathered enough stem cells, you're going to have to come back for another day. I was optimistic. I'm not going to have to come back. I'm sure they've got enough stem cells. You can see the big bag. It's filled with stuff. Well, at 8:30 that night, the call did come in, and I did need to return. And I sobbed uncontrollably. I cried like I've never cried in my life. I cried so hard, I didn't even know why I was crying that hard. I was angry. I did everything they asked me to do. I sat, and I behaved just like they asked me, and that still wasn't good enough. Well, the next morning, the tears were dried up. I was ready. I was going to go in, and we were going to get those stem cells. And I go in and I said, let's get this party started. I walk into the room, the little room with the big machine and the comfy chair, and I hesitated. Dr. Williams asked me if I was cold. I was shaking. All of a sudden, I started to itch like mad, itch like crazy. I lifted up my sleeves and Big welts were rising out of me like biscuits in a hot oven. I screamed, "I'm allergic!" And Dr. Williams gently took my hand and says, "You're not allergic. We haven't given you anything yet. You're having a reaction to being here, to sitting." My body reacted to the anticipation of sitting, even when my brain tried to tell it otherwise. I can't sit still to save my life.